On today's show, a look at what I think a perfect offseason could look like for the Philadelphia 76ers. Of course, all within realism. I'm not going to be out here trading everybody, sending off Joel Embiid and Paul George and landing all these crazy players. Stuff that I could actually see happening that I think puts the Sixers in the best position possible to return to the postseason next year. Before I get into all the moves I would make, I want you to get involved here on the show and let me know one move you think the Sixers need to make this offseason. It can be a trade, it can be a free agency signing, it can be draft related as well. Let me know the one move you need to see happen for Philadelphia down in the comments section. I'm going to start my perfect offseason here with the draft. And in the draft, ideally, you take Ace Bailey at 3, and then Milos Uzan later on in the second round at number 35. And I have been on Ace Bailey this entire draft cycle. To me, he is the guy you have to take at number 3. And I think you've got to stick at number 3. I'm not trading the pick away, trading down, none of that. I'm sticking at 3. I'm taking Ace Bailey. Measured in at the combine without shoes at about 6'7.5", but with shoes just under 6'9", 200 pounds. Very young at just under 19 years old. And that size, man, nearly 6'9" with a 7-foot wingspan. It plays, especially with his unique skill set. His lone season at Rutgers didn't have a lot of team success. People thought Rutgers might have with him and fellow top prospect Dylan Harper, but he showcased a lot of the skills people thought he could show with his scoring ability, was hitting the glass, showed some good signs defensively as the season progressed, and the shooting numbers with the amount of tough shots he had to take, honestly, I think look pretty good. And the reasons I think Ace Bailey should be the pick here for Philadelphia. He is a tough shot taker and a tough shot maker. And look, he did take a lot of bad shots. And people knock him for that, saying that his shot selection is poor and he needs to do a better job of taking better looks. And sure, he does. But look, with Rutgers, not a lot of space to operate, a lot of bad players around him. With the Sixers, he'll get better looks. And the fact that he made so many difficult shots in the mid-range and especially from the outside from that three-point line, man, you don't see a lot of players at his size making the kind of shots that he was. He's a plus athlete, and he showed the ability to play off the ball with Dylan Harper, making good cuts, attacking the offensive glass. He impressed me with what he was able to do when he wasn't dominating with the ball, and he showed steady improvement throughout the year, really in all areas. He was very coachable, and to me, it showed that he wasn't just content with what his natural ability was. He wanted to refine his game, which is what you like to see out of guys who sometimes they can kind of be content with their natural ability. No, he wanted to really become the best player he could be in his 1 year at Rutgers. And that included the defensive side of the ball where he made a lot of strides. Beginning of the year, wasn't very good defensively. Towards the end of the year, got a lot better. Now, he does have a pretty loose handle. It's a decent handle for somebody his size, but when you take a look at, his high-end comps and his high-end upside, you'd like to see that handle get a little bit tighter so he can create some better space on his own. Again, one of the reasons he took a lot of bad shots, he really couldn't create a whole lot of space for himself. The decision-making, the finishing definitely have to improve. I think the finishing will get better as he adds on weight and becomes stronger in the NBA, but definitely the decision-making as well, something that he'll have to grow on a little bit as he enters the NBA. To me, this is a high upside, lower floor kind of guy at number 3 overall. If you're swinging for the fences, which is what I would do at number 3, I want a guy who has super high upside. And Ace Bailey, if everything comes together, I think he can be a franchise level guy, but he has a lot to work on. Yet, if I'm Philadelphia, this is the kind of guy I want to go after, someone who can really change your franchise around with this young core. Then in the second round, the guy I am targeting is Milos Uzan, the guard out of Houston, 6'4", 190 with a 6'5" wingspan, an older prospect. And I think that's something the Sixers are going to look after, especially if you take a more of a project type of player in Ace Bailey. You take more of a steady guy in someone like Milos Uzan, who transferred from Oklahoma to Houston and was very good for Houston this past year as they made that deep run in the NCAA tournament over his 3 years in college, really progressed in his offensive game, 2 out of his 3 seasons, shooting at least 40% from 3. And especially with Houston this year on that great defensive squad, really showed off a lot of improvements defensively, where prior to the season, that was where a lot of question marks were for Uzan. He has a good positional size at that guard spot, someone who's going to play the 1, play the 2 combo guard, maturity, the poise with an older prospect like Uzan is what I love to see, and something the Sixers could definitely use. I mentioned the notable defensive improvement. Like this Houston team was one of the best defenses we've seen in college, really in quite a long time. And he was a big part of that. Played more aggressive, played more physical. Not perfect yet on that end, but you like to see that coming along throughout his college career. He's a high-level passer, a great playmaker, someone who you can trust to run that second unit. And while he doesn't have the handle to necessarily be a high-end starting point guard, I love him as the backup point guard on this team. And he's a good floor spacer as well. We looked at those numbers. 2 out of the 3 years, a really good three-point shooter. I think that's here to stay. Now, the reason he's more of a second-round guy, not really a first-round guy, he does lack those elite physical tools and limited as a rim attacker. And as I mentioned, that handle does kind of stop him from having that super high upside. But top end of the second round, this is a guy who I think can impact this team right away and would really round out that guard rotation, right? I don't really want or think Kyle Lowry should be back with his team. So you have Maxey, you have Grimes, you have McCain. You need one more guy in that guard rotation. I think you always want a good guard out there to run the show, especially a true point guard, because I think, obviously Grimes and I think McCain as well are more natural twos. I think Uzan can be that natural point guard off the bench. Then I'm making a trade here for Philadelphia to bring in some size behind Joel Embiid. That is Daniel Gafford of the Dallas Mavericks. And there's been a lot of talk he could be on the move this offseason with an expiring contract. Michael Scotto of HoopsHype saying that Gafford is a trade candidate to monitor should he not agree to an extension with Dallas. The 26-year-old center will want a pay raise. The Mavericks already have Anthony Davis on a max and 21-year-old center Derek Lively a year away from being extension eligible. So naturally, there's been talks that he could be expendable if the Mavs do not want to pay him long term. And ever since the Mavericks got him in that trade last season, in the 2023-24 season when they made their run at the NBA Finals, he has been absolutely phenomenal for them. A guy who's going to play in the paint. He can catch lobs. He's going to defend the rim. And he's going to do it at a very high level. You don't have to ask him to do too much outside of that. But that role that he does, it's very, very valuable. And again, we saw it when the Mavericks were making that deep run. Him and Lively, that center rotation was phenomenal. I think a player that the Sixers could really use as some insurance behind Joel Embiid. Now, of course, got to trade for him. And I think a trade like this makes sense. I was talking to the host of our Mavericks show here at Chat Sports, my boy Jeffrey Cooper. So he said this would be pretty adequate compensation for Daniel Gafford, considering he is on an expiring deal and you may not be able to retain him after this season. I'm giving him Kelly Oubre and Andre Drummond, two guys that I think honestly are pretty expendable, as well as a 2028 first-round pick. And you bring Gafford in here, again, with Joel Embiid, I want center depth behind him. And so if Embiid does miss time, instead of trying to rely on a young guy like Adem Bono, who I really do like and showed some good signs, you can now start Daniel Gafford there instead, have Bono come off the bench, and you're not missing too much, I don't think, in that center rotation. Next up, I'm re-signing both Guerschon Yabusele and Quentin Grimes. And this is going to be difficult, right? This is why I did a trade for someone like Daniel Gafford, though, as opposed to somebody like Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson making about $20 million. Daniel Gafford at about 13, 14. That even $6 million does help you trying to bring them both back. Now, this all hinges on Guerschon Yabusele taking that smaller deal, taking the taxpayer mid-level exception, about a 2-year, $11.2 million deal. What you can do is you can have the second year of the deal be a player option. That way, after this upcoming season, he can decline that option. You can sign him then to a bigger contract. Obviously, it's kind of up to Guerschon what he wants to do. If he doesn't want to take this small of a deal, he's not going to be returning to Philadelphia. But look, this is my perfect offseason. In a perfect world, he takes a little bit of a discount for a team that, took the chance on him to revitalize his NBA career. I understand he's going to want to get paid because he is around 30 years old. Not like he's a young guy who has all this time left to collect that bag, but he's a fan favorite. I think if he's willing, getting him on this deal then allows you to re-sign Quentin Grimes, because when you re-sign Yabusele using the mid-level exception, it hard caps you at the second apron. And with all these moves, you're going to be right up there. And especially with a contract that I think Quentin Grimes is going to command. And look, this 4-year, $80 million deal comes out to about $20 million average annual value for Quentin Grimes. Might even be less than what he could get on the open market. Now, not a lot of teams have the money to throw a huge contract at Grimes. It's pretty much just like the Brooklyn Nets. But look, there's a chance they throw $25, $30 million at him, and the Sixers are going to be in a tough spot. But again, in a perfect world, you get him for right about $20 million a year. Again, this will push you right up against that second apron, which you will not be able to go over. But being able to bring in Gafford, still being able to afford Gershon and Quentin Grimes on this deal, which he has earned, by the way, played tremendously in the second half of the season, able to bring all your guys back. That is the ideal scenario for me and for Philadelphia. Then I'm going to pick up the team options for both Justin Edwards and Jared Butler. These are no brainers, really, to me, especially Justin Edwards. There's no doubt in my mind that this option gets picked up, of course. UDFA, former UDFA, played great for his hometown team this season, especially down the stretch, man. Really showed a lot of things at 6'7" on that wing spot, defending, shooting a three ball near 40% in the last couple of months of the year. Obviously, you want to see that translate to a full season, but at $1.9 million, he will be back. And then I'm picking up the option on Jared Butler as well, that fifth guard in that rotation. I'm not sure if the Sixers will end up doing this, and maybe if they really need to cut costs and cut those corners, he's a guy that won't be back. But look, he's young, and I liked what he showed for the Sixers team in limited run after you got him in the Reggie Jackson trade. So I would like to see him back on this team as opposed to somebody like Kyle Lowry, who is pretty much just a coach at this point. If he wants to come back, why not just come back as an assistant head coach? And then finally, for my perfect offseason, you just got to pray for better health, man. That's really what it comes down to. You know, I've talked a lot in the show about what the Sixers can do to improve the roster with limited resources and limited cap space. But at the end of the day, you just need Joel Embiid to be healthy. If he's not healthy once again, and he's not back out there on the floor performing at an all-star, all-NBA, MVP type level, sure, this team could rebound and make the playoffs, but they really don't have a shot at winning an NBA championship. So you got to pray that the surgery Embiid's getting works. You got to pray Paul George can bounce back from all the injuries he suffered last year, and you have full health. Because outside of that, there's really not much you can do. Now, with the moves I made, this is what the roster would be looking like heading into next year. Of course, you can sign guys to minimums, two ways, that sort of things. But just with the moves I have made today, Maxey, Grimes, Paul George, Gershon Yabusele, Joel Embiid would be your starting five. And again, assuming health, that is a tremendous starting five with what Gershon showed last year. And if Grimes can do what he did at the end of the year in a full season in Philadelphia, off the bench at those guard spots, as I mentioned, you got Uzan, who you drafted number 35. You got Jared Butler. I love Jared McCain coming off the bench as that spark plug score six-man. Look, he could start in some spots, but I really like the Maxey Grimes starting combo and the McCain coming off the bench, leading that charge. Hopefully he can bounce back from his season-ending injury as well. On the wings, obviously, George and Yabusele. You draft Ace Bailey. You still have Ricky Council on this roster. Pick up the option on Justin Edwards. I really like that rotation there as well. And then bringing in Daniel Gafford. You still have Adam Bona at the center spot. As some insurance, I'd be totally fine with Daniel Gafford starting a bunch of games for this team if Embiid does get hurt. But if Embiid does get hurt, I think obviously the ceiling of this team is a whole lot lower than it would be if he was healthy. All right, those are the moves that I've decided to make. Of course, you can let me know the moves that you would make if you were running this team and you were trying to get the Sixers back to the playoffs. Predict it for me right now. Obviously, a lot to go in this offseason. Plenty of moves to be made, and we'll see what the roster actually looks like come next season. But a way too early prediction. What will the Sixers' record be next season? I think, man, if you're healthy, completely healthy, you should win at least 50 games. If not, at least go 500, man. It'd be very disappointing to have another 20 to 30 win season in Philadelphia in back-to-back years. If that happens, probably gonna be some changes in next offseason. Be sure to hit that sub button here on 76ers Now as we enter this offseason. The draft, of course, coming up in about a month, and then free agency will be live for both of those. And I'm providing you videos almost every single day on all the latest Sixers news, rumors, and more. So do not miss a thing and hit that sub button.